I've got a confession to make.
I need to get this off my chest. As a business owner, we all make mistakes.
I've got to confess.
And we are live. Awesome to have you, Kim Barrett. Episode 1. Excited?
Great. Yeah, pumped to be here as always.
Now, I feel we should start this episode with a bit of honesty. So for everyone listening right now, this is actually episode 4 we've recorded. But as you'll know, I've called it episode 1 and it's the first one we're releasing. Now, we want to go into the story of why this is happening and what's happened here. So I'm going to kick over to Kim to start things off. Why is this episode 1 but actually episode 4?
Yes, episode 1.4. The reason is, so we wanted to put together, originally when Charlie and I were discussing what we wanted to do with the podcast, is we wanted to talk about what we're doing, like actually give people like properly behind the scenes of stuff that we're making happen. And we started and we launched. And don't get me wrong, the first 3 episodes that we recorded were really good. Like they were good content, but we kind of just had almost like rants and discussions on certain topics. Like we talked about cryptocurrency. We talked about, like your network. We talked about, what else? We talked about Christmas time and like
travel.
Finishing off the
we had a heap on travel.
Yeah, we had a very long session on travel. But then we went, well, after we got to episode 3, Charlie messaged me. It's like, oh man, you're either going to love me or hate me right now. But I feel like we kind of didn't do what we wanted to do originally with the podcast. And I was like, crap. Yeah, you're right. So then we said, all right, cool. Scratch, wash our hands, start again from the episode 1. We probably will still have the first 3 episodes somewhere for people to check out because they were good. But there we weren't the proper thing that we wanted to have happening for the podcast.
Oh, what a sobering experience that was, I tell you. Now, we will release the other 3 episodes. And if anything, it's about being transparent. We want to, show people what we're really doing. And as a part of that, we make real mistakes. And I must admit, it's a very, very powerful thing when you can go to a situation and say, we kind of fucked this. Let's start again. Like, let's do this with what we kind of intended to do. So how are you? I must know, like, when I sent you that voice message and you hit it at I don't think we did what we did. How did you feel in that moment?
I was like, it was kind of reaffirming. I was like, actually, we didn't. I was like, that's what I remember what we wanted to do. And we kind of had aspects of it, but it wasn't as like precise where we said, cool, this is what we want to do, this is what we want to achieve with the podcast. And then we when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I didn't even realize. I just had fun recording podcasts. Talking about travel and Bitcoin and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's so much better. And it was a good realization. I think that's why we kind of both work pretty well together as we go, cool. If we have an idea or we identify something we need to fix, we just fix it and keep moving forward. We don't let it kind of hold us back or anything like that.
Yeah, I really do appreciate our relationship to a point where we can have those honest conversations. And I feel like everyone in business needs to be able to have those honest conversations because sometimes you can hold on to something. Like we could have easily just gone, oh, it will do, kind of fake it till you make it and do episode 4. But, to take the time to go back and go, all right, let's do this properly, I think was a great decision there. So I want to shift the question here and if we've, are admitting this now, like let's let the guys in and give them more details on what we want to do with this podcast. Let's be real about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, overarching, so like I kind of like to think of everything as like layers, like a cake, onion, depending on which Shrek reference you like better. But so essentially we have at the top, we have a group called The Association, which is where we share all our behind the scenes of marketing. We help people grow their businesses, identify joint ventures, work on their systems and strategy. And the podcast is a step down from that where we share every week what we're doing, what we identified, kind of if anything works really well, anything that's screwed up royally, and then what we're going to be doing next week to kind of pivot and adjust. And it's almost like a real life show, if you will, and tracking of what Charlie and I are doing in our businesses and also our clients' businesses and what works, what doesn't, how we can make those adjustments. And so you can kind of see, instead of everyone going, oh, here's this great strategy or tactical idea, it's like, cool, well, actually we did that. It screwed up, this happened, or this worked. And it's a bit of back and forth between me and Charlie on those subjects.
Yeah, I agree with that massively. Like, one of the big things I feel is a big issue is that there's a huge paradox going on in the business owner space right now, where you get presented this glorified, piece of theory, but then they don't really tell you what went wrong, or if they really do that at all. It's like, I know people that, and I'm not going to name names on this because it's a very, very interesting dynamic, but I'll use the obvious one. It's kind of like, if you're someone who makes your money speaking from the stage and then you sell a method you don't actually use, that's a paradox. It's a huge paradox. And if you're a, heavily unhealthy, overweight personal trainer trying to tell people how to get fit, that's a paradox. And I didn't want to end up a paradox. I really, really didn't. I despise that, because along the way, I've come across so many people that have done fantastic things, like they really, really have, but they've been almost too scared to say the mistakes, say what went wrong along the way, when in reality, every one of these people I speak to, myself included, and you included in this, like, we regularly screw shit up, like regularly.
All the time.
It's how you overcome those challenges and how you deal with things like that actually makes you. And that's exactly how it is. Now, I'm going to name my partner here, Bianca, because unfortunately she has to listen to all my ideas in the house before I share them with Kim. But when I was doing this, like, the way I'm really thinking about this podcast is I almost want this to be like an audio diary. This is almost like it's Dear Diary, and we're talking about, like, you're reading or listening to, in this case, or maybe even watching the video, but you're actually reading a page of my diary or hearing a page of my diary or getting to come along on that very real and raw experience.
Yeah, I love it. And I think it's the same, and it's good with, they always say, like, document and not necessarily create, where we're kind of doing both here, which I think is really cool, and sharing it. And, you'll be able to see, and we'll have ideas. And same thing, it's like, if we have an idea and we think this is going to work, we're going to try it, tune in to see if it actually works, as opposed to just going, oh, here's a great new strategy we've developed. It's like, yeah, we'll actually, we'll tell you we're going to try it, and we'll try it, and then we'll give you the real actual results.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a fantastic way to view it. So this is what I'm kind of open to, and I thought we might as well just discuss this live rather than having, a secret discussion and then bringing it to the podcast. Let's save a step. Each week when we do this podcast, or each episode, because there may be some weeks when we're unavailable due to, holidays or Christmas or whatever, but every time we do this podcast, what I really want to know from you, Kim, and, like, this is how I would love to see it, is, like, I want to know how you last, since we've chatted, what's really happened. Then I want to know what went well, what went wrong, and then what you're going to do differently or could have done differently going into the next bit. And I feel like that would be super helpful just for me, myself personally, in getting to, know what's really happening on your side of things. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, down 100%.
So should we open it up then? Like, maybe we just get straight into it.
Let's do it.
So what's happened in, I suppose, the last bit? Because this is the first one.
Yeah, well, first one. So in our previous, not episodes, but previous things we tried when we had a discussion, we're looking at how we can get stuff going for Christmas, right? So I was thinking about it, and one of the things we have is that we have a business that creates custom bots for people. So I was like, cool, I want to frame it around, because we're looking at Christmas normally is a month where it's quite slow. So we're like, cool, how can I frame someone buying a bot now to benefit them in Christmas? So I started positioning it as like a Christmas elf who's going to run your business for you while you're away on Christmas, Boxing Day, all this sort of stuff. So I was like, cool, this is how I'm going to position it to people. And so I did a live stream. So today is like the 8th or 9th, I think, the day after Melbourne Cup Day. So I'm like, I'm going to do a live in the afternoon and, try and get all this engagement. I'm going to make an offer for these Christmas elves. And then, looking back at it, I was like, man, I haven't provided any content in my group for the last 10 days. Then I put a post up on the morning of Melbourne Cup Day. Everyone on the East Coast is probably already half cut, and on the West Coast is probably heading somewhere. I'm going to do a live this afternoon at 3 p.m., 2 hours after the Melbourne Cup when everyone's already had a ridiculous amount of drinks and blah, blah, blah. So I do my live and then I'm like, I get a lot less engagement than I do normally. And I'm like, well, I literally set myself up to have a tough approach, a tough audience to even try and think of for there. So I was like, I didn't really plan it. I just thought, well, I'm just going to chuck it up and see what sticks. Because we had a good offer for it, what I think, which is they only pay. So the offer that we put forward was they only pay 50% now, and they don't have to pay another, and we'll get it done by Christmas. Like it'll be firing and perfect by Christmas Eve, so they can turn off for that little festive season period, and then they pay the balance in January.
It's a great offer, by the way. I like that offer. Yeah. Like, I'm going to go with it. Now, just for anyone that doesn't know, like Kim's referring to Facebook bots or messenger bots. So these are automated chat cycles that work on Facebook Messenger and websites. And the offer he's talking about is that to get people started in December but not have to pay the balance till January, was it?
Yeah, 50% now, 50% in January.
Which I like for a lot of reasons. I really like when I look at it, I think it makes it easy for people to get started. It also fills the need for the Christmas period or holiday break where people are going to be away from their business. So having, an automated chat system so you can be more away, like that adds value in my mind. However, the approach of spray and pray on Melbourne Cup Day.
Man, just roll the dice. Roll the dice. No, that was very poorly executed, I would say. But again, full disclosure, so far, no inquiries. But I did so I followed it up and I was like, okay, cool. How can I recover from that? So obviously I did it in my group. I did I thought this was cool. So I did like a little bot message out. And I was like, cool, do you want to know how you can get a Christmas elf? And I downloaded, now I have super fast internet speed downloading and uploading things. So I downloaded the live, uploaded it to YouTube, and I was like, cool, do you want to find out how you can get an elf? Watch my 15-minute video. And if they say no, that they don't want an elf, I was like, okay, hopefully someone else will help Mikey get a job this Christmas. And there's an elf with like a really sad face and looks like he's crying. So I thought that was quite funny. I thought that was quite good when I did that.
It's very topical. I like it.
And so someone came back and he's like, I don't want Mikey not to have a job. It was quite funny. It opened a few discussions and conversations. But so then I said, cool, well, I may have screwed up that part, but I do have a list of probably 250 people that have either opted in for bot training, webinars, stuff like that. So that broadcast went out about 20 minutes ago. So I'm fingers crossed that I get some inquiries from there and I can bring that back a little bit and reel it back in with that offer. So in the group, I said I'm only going to run it until Friday. And I like to always be a person of my word. So I will have to, if I do run it, if I recreate it after Friday, I have to come up with a new offer because I have to be integral to what I say.
Absolutely. I think integrity is just such a huge part of being a marketer these days. I think for so long, we're all sick of seeing only available for 24 hours and it never gets taken down. Questionable. But
can I just on that point? So I did a launch of a thing called the 90-day system. I built this whole thing, thought it was amazing, launched it, and said it was only going to be open for 48 hours. I think I only sold, it was like $1,000 and I sold 2 people, which was good. But then I literally I had it. So I had a countdown timer and then it redirected. As soon as it hit that time, redirected and said, sorry, we're closed. Just so that people actually knew that when I say stuff closes, it's like, it's not just there and the timer resets and you have another 48 hours is gone.
I love that. I think I can appreciate that massively as well. Both of us have had a huge experience with all kinds of internet marketers over the years and seen some very questionable behavior. So it's nice to see that there's, a fresh slate of people coming through who are ethical and that's the way they're thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's been the last week and also be a little bit longer by the sound of things. And as I said, that's the honest way it happened. And I can really appreciate that. I almost feel like I'm watching an episode of The Truman Show a little bit. It's like the Truman Interview, that movie with Jim Carrey, which is cool. So looking back on this, I'm going to point out the obvious one in saying that probably we wouldn't do the spray and pray next time. We should know better, especially Kim. But how would you have done it differently? How can we kind of look at this experience and say, well, and I think you may have already solved this in interacting with people that have already had something to do with you. But
yeah, and
how
as
would
well,
you do this differently?
The biggest one, like if just for the group launch, like everything else I'm reasonably happy with now, which I thought of after and followed up. But I would have probably liked to have seeded probably for a week, given some just like good free content into my group, some insights, talking more about Christmas coming up without any like offer attached, and then going cool on, so like, a live every couple of days or whatever, and then led up to the point of probably not yesterday, probably more so would have been today, being that I'm going to go live and tell you how you can get a Christmas elf and bot to help you automate your stuff over Christmas. So I would have done some pre-content because I came to the realization, like, we have a lot of friends who have big Facebook groups, get a lot of engagement, make all these sales and stuff like that. And we've both tried our hands at growing groups, but I don't have, and I have to remember, I don't have that level of engagement where I can just go in and drop an offer. And it's such a big group that everyone just takes it up. I have to like pre-seed. I have to then like layer in the value, rebuild the engagement, because I'm not always consistently in there, which is again just a lapse in just I don't do it. I just haven't made time for it. So I think if I had like thought ahead of that, then I would have got a much, much, much better result.
Yeah, I think that proves the point as well. Is like, and good on you for respecting what these guys have done with groups. Because again, like, this is something I see is like, I've seen people that start a Facebook group and then basically expect it to perform like some of those amazingly well put together communities do, and they just don't. Like, those guys put years into crafting a community, and I think they've done such an excellent job. And it's like, if we try to imitate that without that level of, authority in the group and consistency, like, it can backfire pretty heavily. So, I mean, doing things a little bit differently, and that's why I like that you've engaged with people that have already had something to do with you. Now, are you planning to keep engaging with that group and keep building that group?
I do want to utilize and activate it, because look, I have generated sales from it, and it's a good, like, I think, like, an authority positioning piece. Like, it's a good to distribute content, which I haven't really done. So, for example, like when we go live with these podcasts, I'll be sharing them into there, which I think I haven't done very well, which is just using it as a distribution channel. Like, I normally use my email list. Maybe if I remember, I send it out through my bots. But it's like, whoa, I have 1,000, 1,200 people sitting there that somewhat like, they're still in the group. They haven't left. They're somewhat like it. They engage and whatnot. So I need to better utilize and better provide them value, because I think there is still, it's essentially a database, 1,200 people that like and interested in Facebook ads and growing an online business. So I should better utilize and provide value to them.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing by video as well. So I had a friend who was at an event last week, and the event will remain nameless for now because it's not my place to say where this happened. But after the event, my friend got to speak with someone, and the way it got positioned is they asked him, what are you doing for marketing right now in your business? What are you doing on, like, he said, he goes, for all his high-end clients and himself, there's only 3 things they're doing at the moment, and this is all they will continue to do for the ongoing future. Is 1, they do social media, specifically video. And I think that's something we're going to be doing here. Like, we're recording this on Zoom at the moment. So I think that's something we're going to release. And it sounds like it could be a really good thing for your group to test how that engagement goes. The second thing they said is Facebook ads. And I'm going to say you're pretty well versed on that one. Got that one covered. Just a switch.
Yeah.
And then the last one there is joint ventures, which I thought was particularly cool as well. So I think there's a lot of things we can kind of look at that if you wanted to, I guess, kind of grow your bot perspective from my mind, that's the avenues I'd be looking at. So I'd be thinking, okay, well, he's got the group thing covered, and that's how he's going to participate on social. He's got the recording of, this recording now, or the live he did, he can promote. Now, the element of joint ventures seems like it could be the next piece of the puzzle if this is something you do want to push before Christmas. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, that's 100% on point. And I have thought about it, and I have I've got a couple of people I have to message that I do want to get, I want to get something going, because I know we have like a heap of capacity for our bots, and that's probably the missing piece, as you say, that joint venture part where I can get other people helping me promote it out. Because I think it's, as you said, like, I think it's a good offer. I think it will help people, it'll provide value. it's kind of a no-brainer in my mind anyway, considering that everyone previously just have to pay in full. We're pretty strict on that. So I think it's definitely a good missing piece. If it didn't look weird, I would be taking notes of those 3 things so I can remind myself later to put that down.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is one of those things where I would love, and I'm sure anyone who listens to this would enjoy it also, but let's report back on this one. Let's see how this changes coming into Christmas time. And let's report back to the listeners or viewers on how that's been different and, the results that came from it. Because if someone wanted to do something similar, and I'm not encouraging you to swipe Kim's chatbot business here and try and replicate it for yourself, but maybe you're in a different type of business where you're doing something similar. You might be in the SaaS space, or maybe you do have some other product or service that could benefit from trying something like this. And this is your chance to kind of swipe and deploy what we do based on the results we're getting, rather than trying to work this stuff out for yourself. So that's what I'm going to call for a bit of encouragement on that one, Kim. Like, you're going to have to get back to the results with us.
I definitely will. Don't worry. We'll track it all and get back to you. But now let's flip switch then, Charlie. We've heard about me. What about you? What's been going on? What have you been trying out since we last spoke? What's been happening in your world?
Yeah, so my last little run, I feel like in the last week, I have been a little bit of a yo-yo where I've had some really good wins. And then on the other side of that, have been very much challenged by an old friend called Infusionsoft, which I'll get to in a minute. So I'll start with the win. We might as well start on a high note here, because this is something that's been working so well for me. Maybe a month, I'm going to say 2 months ago now, a friend contacted me and basically was extremely concerned that Facebook organic was dead. They were getting no reach from their posts and no reach on their stuff. And I don't know why, but I felt the need to call bullshit. I just don't feel that was true. I actually, and I'm not going to name this person, hopefully they never listen to this episode either. But one thing I really noticed was that I'm like, all the people are still on social media. I still use all my social media apps, if not more now than ever. What am I actually consuming? And when I looked at this and then I looked at their page, I realized that it wasn't an issue of not getting organic reach. It was an issue of they were posting absolute crap. What they were putting out to the community expecting results were shit. So I took it upon myself to try a couple of things, just for my own purposes and projects to see how they performed. So the first one is I got serious on video. So this is uploading video direct to the platform you're using, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is. So not sharing my YouTube link onto the platforms, but uploading videos directly. And I noticed pretty quickly that if you have some sort of a decent hook headline, which I'll go into in a second, and a real video or live broadcast on the platform, you get tremendous amounts of reach. And what this kind of highlighted to me was that if you're putting quality stuff up there, and I don't mean quotes and I don't mean photos of your food, unless you're a restaurant, that stuff doesn't work anymore. We're all really immune to it. I'm not going to look at an inspirational quote going, you can do it and buy from your company. And case in point, if that worked, Tony Robbins would be doing it. And the fact he's not tells me he wised up to it as well. So all the people that are mass publishing onto social media, those days are gone, well and truly gone. Now, what has worked really, really well, and I'll put up some statistics in the next month. But what I noticed really quickly is just by posting 2 good quality videos a week. So one might be a Facebook Live, and one might be an iPhone video, or one might be a recording like the one we're doing now. By promoting 2 of them per week, I was able to basically go 5x on the reach. So we've got 5 times the reach and engagement. Not to mention the thing that stood out to me is that someone who sees a quote versus someone who watches you on video for 2 minutes. How's the quality of that lead?
Yeah, big difference.
Yeah, huge. So I guess the win I want to share at this point is that it just feels to me that, when I hear the masses saying, Facebook reach is dead or Instagram reach is dead, when we're all spending all this time on these platforms, you've got to really start questioning it and paying attention. Now, I heard some other rumors, and this is a rumor, though I'm fairly confident, that Facebook's really trying to take on YouTube. Like I've heard that their aspiration is to get more video onto the platform and content producers. And that's why they're pushing so hard. And they're actually favoring video. They're getting a lot of video showing in order to kind of, get people who want to be publishers on there. And I tell you what, even if it's true or not true, it's still got me to take the action, and the result I'm getting from it is great. So regardless if, Google or YouTube are having a war with Facebook, it seems at the moment, if you go the extra mile with video, like all video, I think you can do really, really well from these platforms.
Yeah, and that's good. And that's a good little distinction because, as you said, like in reality, I don't care if YouTube and Facebook are having a war. But like you said, if you can go, cool, well, now Facebook is giving us whether or not it's 100% true, a little bit of an advantage, then hey, happy days, like take advantage of it. It doesn't mean that Facebook's going to shut down tomorrow or YouTube's going to die. It just means that at the moment, you have the opportunity to take advantage of video more so than you would normally. So I think that's a really good distinction to make, and it's a great to share that solid win. But I'm more excited to hear what's the cat amongst the pigeons. What happened there?
Oh, here we go. Everyone ready for this one? So I've recently taken on I suppose we'll call it a new project in which I'm working to do some events. And what I mean by that is I've got a responsibility in filling these events up and the things that go along with them. I'm working with the company, and they're a great bunch of guys. But in this instant, whenever we take on something new, and this slapped me in the face like really hard, I recognized this morning, just reminded me of how important systems are. Systems and process is everything when it comes to events. It's so, so crucial. Now, in this example here, I had been gifted someone else's work from Infusionsoft and Facebook and a few other things. And that had reasonable, results in the past from using this. But the thing that got highlighted to me, and I'm going to say this again, is like you've got to have a system for testing this stuff before you do it. Now, when we take on something new, that's always going to be the time when the biggest mistakes come. And in this way, it did. So what happened is there was an event on at a location at a certain time, and people were just getting random information. Like some people were getting an SMS with the wrong time. Some people were getting an email from the wrong city. It just really turned into one of these things that we do not like to have happen at all. Now, I look at it and I go like, there's two things that can really, really upset me when it comes to events. And number one is people having the wrong info. And in this case, they did. And I'm really not happy about it. And then the second part is that, despite everyone doing their efforts, it's that we don't learn from it. And that's the point that I'm at now. So something I'm trying to digress, and this is the way I kind of like to solve things, is first up, and this is, again, I've absolutely swiped this from Ray Dalio. I'm not even pretending this is my information. But the first thing is, in this experience, like I sit there and I go, all right, what can I learn from this? And the first thing you got to do is gather the information. So what I've looked at is I've gone into Infusionsoft, gathered all the technical information I can. The second part is I've spoken to the people that were doing the work in these areas and got their point of view and just listened. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not trying to do it because honestly, nothing gets solved from that. Like blasting people or, changing that doesn't really change anything. You've got to find what actually happened or what was true. And then we can make real decisions on what needs to happen from there. And then the third part is you've got to really start to establish, okay, was this, and again, it doesn't matter what the answer to this is, but you need to know, was this a tool error? So for instance, is this Infusionsoft playing up? If it is, what can we do to change that? In the second part of that, was this just a user error? Like we're all humans, we all make mistakes, but if a user made a mistake here, what can we put in place so that it doesn't happen again? And then the third part here, which I feel is the most important one, is that we failed to have a strong enough testing process and auditing process to pick this up. And I've sat there and I've gone, we could change the person, we could change the platform, but ultimately, like either of them would have been fixed if we were smart enough to have a really, really solid testing campaign prior. And we could have planned better and we could have had those things. So that is the hard lesson.
That's good, man. I was going to ask you what the lessons and takeaways were. So you have already identified them, which is great. And I think that's the biggest thing, because so many people, when they go into it, they have this big problem and they'll blow up and they'll be like, all these things went wrong. This person's fault. They're in trouble. This is going to happen. And you've really broke down and gone, cool. identify where did the error come from, what's the process and how did it happen, what's going to be the rectification of that, and then how do we make sure it doesn't happen again next time, which I think a lot of people in business miss, is that they go, cool, they blow up on a particular error, they blow up on something that happens, and then they go, but they don't identify how they can avoid it for next time. They don't identify how they're going to make that adjustment to make sure it doesn't happen again, and then they have it again in 6 months' time.
Absolutely. It's a repeat cycle. And I must admit, I'm learning this from being that person, not from being wise. I used to blow up over things all the time in my business. And it was only when a couple of my staff that I, truly loved, I care about these people like they're my own family, they kind of said to me, it's like, you kind of, blowing up doesn't really solve it. Now, I want to throw something on here. And for anyone that's, I've recently rewatched the entire Breaking Bad series with my partner because she'd never seen it. Nice. And there's a character in season 3, and I absolutely love him. And his name is Gus Fring, and he's the guy that owns the Los Polos chicken shop. Now, I remember watching it. This guy gets into some really interesting situations, like some very challenging situations, and he keeps his cool no matter what. It's like he doesn't blow up on the spot. He takes a step back, thinks about it, and then strategizes how to, seek vengeance or whatever his, scheme is at the time. I should point out he's a massive drug dealer in the series. But when I watched it, it's like there was a situation where he was basically just being decimated by someone and like made to look like a fool and embarrassed. And he just stayed straight and then, took that step back and sought revenge. And I thought, that's what I want to be as a business owner. Is that I don't want to be that person that explodes on the front line and makes irrational, emotional decisions. I want to be the guy that can take a step back, keep his cool, gather the information, and then put forward a strategy to get success in what I want to achieve. Of course, I don't want to be a drug dealer. I should point out, I'm in no way endorsing the idea that anyone should. But I just thought the way his manner and how he dealt with things was just amazing. And that's exactly what I want to bring into here. That's how I want to solve things like this. Because, do you know anyone that hasn't had a problem with Infusionsoft at some point? Like if they use it?
No, it's a permanent issue, right? Like there's always going to be, there's so many different things to do, adjust and play with in there that it's, unless, even if you are the world's best expert in Infusionsoft, I think you still have an error somewhere along the way. As you say, because there's just so much in there, and it can be, confusing. So, I think that it's great, and I like that you're going to have that approach. So, obviously, have you seen Entourage?
Yeah, I've seen Entourage.
Yeah, so obviously you're not going for the Ari Gold approach, which is good. I like. I like watching him just for that shock value, and I like what he does there. But I think it's. If I try to be like that in business, I don't think it would work. So I think that approach is very, very good to have, and it's as you say, it's more methodical and calculating and systemized, which is it probably speaks to that's what your specialty and skill set is, that you want to be like that. So I think that's very, very powerful for everyone to take on board and for everyone to take away and go, cool. Number one, take away from that, test all your stuff. So even if you have the world's expert create a funnel for you, an ad for you, as something for you, test it. Don't rely on other people to get your outcome. And there's a great book, Extreme Ownership, and it's always talking about, it's like, cool, if something happened, and that's exactly what you've identified there, is like, I take responsibility. What could I have done in my position, in what I do, to alleviate that problem? Did I need to communicate more? Did I just need to test all that sort of stuff and going, cool, if anything happens, you can't blow up because you go, cool, that was I take that fully on board. I've done it before as well. And let's go, cool, that's happened. My responsibility. I didn't go through and test it. I just assumed that the guys had it all sorted, and I didn't go through and test. My responsibility. I should have tested, and then afterwards build in a testing and QA process so that make sure it's more effective, more efficient, and the right people test it. So I think it's really good that you've identified that.
Absolutely, and I'm a big fan of Jocko as well. I love that idea because ultimately, like, the only person we really have control of is ourselves, and my opinion is that humans are the worst. We're the most high-risk thing in any situation. And especially when you're dealing with a lot of people, you only increase that risk.
Definitely. So is there anything else that you wanted to share? What about anything from that you're going to, I think you already mentioned a few things you're going to implement coming up, but any other points on there you touch base on for that you're going to make adjustments of going forward that you want to report back on in the future?
So I think I'll come back with how we're going to test things. I think that's, I'll look at what I look at for a good testing protocol for things like this and just for anything in general. But I want to come back to another point you meant about like Ari Gold, because I think it's very interesting. People like Ari Gold, or maybe you watch Suits and you like Harvey, and there's people like that, and you watch these certain type of business owners on the TV that are often, glorified. But it's funny that in reality, when I come into businesses or meet people that are like those characters, they burn the people around them. They really, really, really don't cultivate the best from their team or experience, because that's how they treat the people around them. And I think there's a big thing where it might make fantastic TV, but it certainly does not make a fantastic business. If you spoke to your staff like Ari Gold speaks to the people, that's lawsuits. That's
you couldn't do that in Australia. Definitely not.
But would you want to? Like, would you want to honestly treat people like that?
No, definitely not. As some of the things he says is like, as you say, it makes good TV, but it definitely wouldn't like, I couldn't even imagine saying half the things he says to anyone. Yeah. So it's, as you say, like, I think that, I think there's aspects in there where you can go, cool. Like sometimes when you see people that have a strong stance when they're going into certain things, you could probably use aspects of that in business. But being like that full throttle 24/7, like it's never going to work for anyone. And it's always interesting to see people's, when they watch those things, like who their favorite character is as well. Because I think that kind of sometimes comes back to their personality. So when you say that, for example, Suits, it's like, I think Harvey's cool. I like his office. That's probably the main thing that I like about him. But and he's a cool guy. But I prefer Mike. Like Mike is my favorite character there, right?
I'm a Lewis fan. I love Lewis.
So it's always interesting to see people's. And then it's like, but if someone loves Harvey, then you're like, cool. What type of person is it that Because they probably have aspects of his approach in their own lives too. So it's always an interesting one.
Oh, does that say a lot about me in that I like Gus Fring? Like, is there...
Possibly.
I hope so. Honestly, I was impressed with... obviously, it's TV and it's fabricated, but still, nonetheless, I related to the skill and like how challenging, if that was real, to be that calm would be. So... All right. Well, this is the official. We're going to wrap it up here. This is the official end of episode 1. Now, on it, rate it for me. How much better was this than what we did the other time?
Look, it was at least a 78% increase from what we did previously. The other stuff was good, but to be precise, I think this was good. I like this approach, and I think it is the transparency and truth of what we wanted to bring to do this originally, and I think we've kind of got that. And obviously, we'll keep refining it episode after episode. But I think for a starting point, I think we're on track now.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to create. This is something that I'm going to be proud to send to people, and hopefully people are listening to this now and got something from it. So this will be the official wrap-up of episode 1. I do hope people will subscribe to the podcast. Please check us out on Facebook and get in contact with us. And we'll report back with episode 2. I can't say the date of when that'll be out yet, but there will be an episode 2. Be on the lookout for it.
I've got to confess.